Hello, I'm Kevin Elwood, Marketing and Communications Specialist with Greensboro Transit Agency. Black History Month has been recognized for years by GTA with great projects such as the Black History Heritage Ride. Black History Month, however, has taken on a whole new meaning this year in response to the events from the summer of 2020 and the responses with demonstrations across the nation. Even organizations such as Google and the NFL have stepped up their efforts to support Black-related causes. Due to the current pandemic, GTA has switched gears in its observance this year, and we focused on social media, where we sent out Black history facts as it related to public transportation. Today, we'd like to spotlight just a few of those people and moments that have been important in Black history as it relates to public transportation. So let us begin with talking with Greensboro's first African-American female bus operator, Elizabeth McKinnon. Hi, Elizabeth. How are you today?
Hello, I'm doing good today.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
I am originally from Simpsonville, South Carolina, and my family moved here when I was only 3 months old.
What made you become a bus operator?
I became interested in becoming a bus operator after talking with a bus operator. His name was James Henry Walden Jr. He knew that I was looking for a job. He also knew that I had a background in driving a school bus. So he told me that Duke Power was getting ready to hire some women bus operators, and he encouraged me to put in an application.
Okay, so for people who are not aware, Duke Power is the company that, of course, we write our checks to every month to pay our electric bill. But at one time, they operated public transportation in the Southeast United States, including in Greensboro.
Yes, that is correct. They did.
So you became a bus operator. Your first time behind the wheel. Tell us a little bit about it. How did it make you feel?
My first time behind the wheel of a transit bus made me feel empowered and confident in my ability to do something that I enjoyed.
What would you say is the most difficult thing about being a bus operator in terms of driving these large buses?
The most difficult part about driving a transit bus for me was and has been driving in inclement weather, such as snow and ice.
Yes, Greensboro, of course, has had to deal with inclement weather over the years, although we do try to keep services running as normal as safely possible so that people can make it to the places that they need to go, such as employment. We also try to make sure that the operator's safety is front of mind by going out and checking the roads and making sure that everything is safe for you as an operator. But I can understand that that can be difficult.
Yes, the city has made an effort to make it as safe as possible for us, and yes, that is appreciative.
When you first started, did you feel the enormity of the precedent that you were setting by becoming the first African American female bus operator in Greensboro?
Yes, I did feel the enormity. I was humbled as well as honored, all at the same time.
Describe your relationship with the riders over the years. You are carrying precious cargo, namely the members of our community. What has been your relationship with them?
From the very beginning, I understood the importance of developing and maintaining a good relationship with my passengers. So I would describe my relationship as being a good rapport with my passengers.
That definitely is a good thing to have when driving passengers around the city. Over the years, what are the biggest changes that you've seen in public transportation technology?
Over the years, I would say the biggest change, one of the main biggest change would be um, the buses itself. They are more modern, more updated from what I had been used to, especially whenever I first started. Uh, One of the other biggest changes I would say is the communications, the radio communications and the GPS system. Just having the ability to communicate with our dispatchers, supervisors, also our fellow operators, and if we needed, we had the accessibility to speak directly with our 911 dispatch.
Those are some big changes. One other I'm sure that you enjoyed is the fact that riders no longer have to guess where the bus is because they can take out their phone and look at the free Transloc app and see exactly where Elizabeth McKinnon is and how long until you arrive at their bus stop.
Yes, that is correct. That's definitely a big plus as well.
Over the years, is there anyone that you give credit for mentoring and supporting you during your tenure?
Yes, that would be my parents. My parents were both great examples for me. They taught me good work ethics. They taught me to be respectful and kind to everyone, regardless of their economic status, race, or beliefs.
It has been 40 years for you in this industry. Did you expect to remain in public transportation for this long when you stepped on your first bus?
Yes, I did. And I say that because I enjoyed being an operator and I did not have any plans or any reason to want to change to a different profession.
So you were perfectly happy with driving the citizens of Greensboro.
Yes, I was.
February 1st, 2021 was the beginning of Black History Month, and it was an important day for you as well. Why don't you tell us about it?
That was my actually my official retirement day.
Retirement after 40 years driving not only for our current transit contractor, Keolis Transportation, but also Veolia Transportation, and before that, Duke Power Transit. So you pretty much have had a long tenure with several organizations.
Yes, I guess yes, you could say that.
And I am sure that they have shown you much love for the time that you have spent and the services that you have provided to the community. Do you now have any post retirement plans?
While I am excited about the next chapter of my life, at this time I do not have any immediate plans.
So you're just going to enjoy retirement and whatever comes is whatever comes.
Yes,
As we wrap up, do you have any final words for the Greensboro community or for your fellow bus operators?
I would just like to say thank you for allowing me to work alongside. That this is to my fellow operators, my fellow my everyone I work with. Thank you for allowing me to work alongside of each of you, and also to our community. I would like to say thank you for allowing me to serve you all of these years. And last but not least, I would like to say that Everyone have a purpose in life. Know what your purpose is. Remain focused and trust God.
And there you go. Thank you so much, Elizabeth McKinnon, for joining us today. And we wish you much success in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
We wish Elizabeth well on her retirement and the next phase of her life. Of course, prior to her starting her service, segregation laws restricted how African Americans could travel on the bus, and popular attitudes made that travel less than ideal. In one local community, members said, hey, if we can't ride your bus the way we need to, we'll create our own system. To tell us about this groundbreaking achievement, we visit Winston-Salem, North Carolina, to speak with Tina Carson Wilkins from Winston-Salem Transit Authority. Hello, Tina. How are you today?
I'm great, Kevin. How are you?
I am well, thank you. We are looking at Black History Month through the eyes of public transportation, and we are honored to talk with our compatriots in Winston-Salem because you have a very interesting story to share. Can you tell us about Safe Bus?
Oh, yeah. Hey, listen, the documented history of Winston-Salem includes a lot of information on successful businesses, but there wasn't a lot of information available for the about the Safe Bus Company, which to this day was the largest transportation system in the world, owned and operated by African Americans.
Wow.
Yeah, they started in, I guess, 1926, when the transportation for citizens of East Winston was kind of challenging. I think early in the 1920s, there was a jitney services operating in Winston-Salem, and they operated in such a cutthroat fashion that the mayor at the time, Mayor Thomas Barber, suggested that they either work together or decide not to be able to work at all. So they got together. Trolleys didn't serve the East Winston area at the time. Duke Power had trolleys that went on north, south, east, west tracks. And so East Winston residents were left out of that, okay? Jim Crow public transportation laws created the necessity for privately owned jitneys. And so when Ralph and Harvey Morgan came back to Winston-Salem after being in the military, over in Europe, they were transported by jitneys. And so when they came home, they said, well, hey, let's start a jitney service. And they did. Interestingly, though, 27 jitneys were operating in Winston-Salem by 1923. And as I said, they were rambling up and down Woodland Avenue here in Winston-Salem, running till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and people were complaining about it. So the alderman at the time said, hey, you guys are going to have to come up with some kind of plan. They did that, so much so that 35 jitneys started operating in Winston-Salem at the time. And so, and yes, it was cutthroat. So if someone might have been standing on the corner waiting to pay their nickel to the jitney owner of the Blue Dismukes jitney, and someone else came along and that person got in that particular jitney, created some problems there. 20% of the city was covered by the jitneys. The other 80 was covered by Duke Power through the trolleys and through Southern Public Utilities, which was a bus system that was operating at the time. And so Mayor Barber suggested that they get together. They did. About 21 of the jitneymen went to the Lincoln Theater, which was owned by an African American. And when they got to the Lincoln Theater, they said, let's either work together or come up with a plan where we won't be encroaching on each other's, space or areas. 13 of those men pledged their life savings to get the company started. Each one was allowed to purchase stock at $100 per share. And they were granted a charter by the state of North Carolina on May 26, 1926. Now, bear this in mind. They raised $100,000 to start the company. in 1926. So operations started on June 1st of that year. Some of the original owners were Harvey Morgan, Joe Miller, George Dillahunt, John Adams, George Ragsdale, Elliott Davis, Jefferson Harrison, C.T. Woodland, Charlie Peebles, Ralph Morgan, and Elijah Miller. And of those gentlemen, 11 of these gentlemen became officers of the company, and there were two silent owners. And so, operating a system, they knew it was going to, be a lot to that. They knew nothing about operating a transportation system. So they put together a public transit system that functioned in 20% of the city of Winston-Salem, and they were profitable throughout the years. Originally, they had no garage to put their buses in, they had nothing. And so they were able to park their vehicles across the street from what was then Atkins High School. And if you know anything about the high schools in Winston, Carver High School was for students who lived like outside of the city. They were county residents. And Atkins was for people who lived or students who lived inside the city limits, okay? So eventually they formed an agreement with Atkins High School. They parked their vehicles across the street. They got started with 42 vehicles. Now, the first garage that they had sat at the corner of 3rd and Church Streets. And so that's where they, were able to set up and operate as a transit system. They were never allowed to come past the railroad tracks into downtown Winston-Salem. They didn't get that opportunity until the 60s. Nonetheless, Safe Bus recruited people from all over the place, particularly people from the Deep South, because they felt like a lot of people might have been willing to move, come to Winston-Salem, where they would be able to make some good money as bus operators or drivers. Company grew so fast that they had to move their operations to a downtown garage, and they were also able to lease space to repair all of the buses. But on August 6th of 1932, Southern Public Utilities and decided to get licenses to operate 9 jitney lines in the city, thinking that they, would be able to compete, but not necessarily compete in East Winston. The operation was a source of pride for people in the community. In 32, Charlie Peebles was elected president of the company. In 35, the fleet had grown from 42 vehicles to about 45. And the company realized, hey, we need to move. We need to find a place to put all of our vehicles. So they had their own building put in place, for lack of a better term. They built it at a cost of $15,000 for the land and $50,000 actually for the facility. So the first floor was designed for rental space. So they had a beauty shop there and a grocery store. The second floor was designed for Safe Bus administrative offices. And the top floor is where all of the bus operators would start and end their day. So they would go there and get their change purses, well, not purses, but their change belts and get everything set for their day. And it was also where there was a chute that they could slide the money down at the end of the night, the money that had come into the fare boxes. There was a problem, though. In 1945, 2 transportation systems were operating, and so Duke Power started feeling that crunch a little bit because, as I said, Safe Bus took care of all of the transportation needs for the citizens of the East Winston community, and that's where African Americans went. If you think about it, it's starting June 1st, 1926. African Americans did not have to sit in the back of the bus at all. Once Safe Bus hit the road, our passengers, and I say our because the Winston-Salem Transit Authority inherited the system in 1972, but our passengers were able to sit any place that they wanted to sit when they boarded that bus.
That's
Most
great.
of the officers there were college educated. They were children of the owners of Safe Bus Company, and they would graduate college and come and work at Safe Bus once they graduated, or they would take their summers there. Uh, During Pearl Harbor, the company had planned about a $750,000 expansion, but all of that changed with Pearl Harbor. So they were not able to buy more buses, but they did take over controlling interest in a cab company that was African American owned. It was Camel City Cab Company. And when Camel City joined them, they had 36 cabs with two-way radios. So when people called in, the dispatcher could just simply let them know, they were to go to whatever location. Now, when Camel City joined, they brought with them four shop mechanics, four radio dispatchers, two traffic men, 49 regular drivers, and six administrators. And they had a 24/7 operation with a fare of 35 cents citywide. So they really were very, I guess, they had that entrepreneurial spirit. By
Very
1940,
industrious.
yeah, very much so. By 1946, things weren't so great between the drivers and management. The drivers had a 7-day strike for the right to organize a union. And so they were working 60 to 65 hours each week, 6 days per week, 10 hours and 45 minutes each day for 45 cents per hour. And they knew that the owners were much more successful than that. In May 1955, Duke Power closed its franchise and sold out to city coach lines from Jacksonville, Florida. So they had to make some adjustments with that, and they were making those shifts as far as the owners were concerned, taking their turn as president of the company. But it was in 1947 when they had some of their most critical years. John Adams was president during that time until 1959 when he passed away. But under his leadership, the company grossed in 1955 $425,000. And so they were really doing quite well. Following the death of Mr. Adams, though, they had their first female president, Mary Burns. She served as president for 6 months. And then after she left the office of president, then Miss Delphine Morgan became the president. But they did so very well. Ms. Morgan served until 1961 when Mr. Buster Green became company president. They bought 4 new buses at a cost of about $27,500 each. And believe it or not, we still have one of those replicas of those buses here at our facility. As far as money and opportunities were concerned, none of the owners experienced any, I guess, hard times after they started Safe Bus Company. As a matter of fact, some of them started companies of their own. Harvey Morgan went on to start an insurance company. He left after being president for 1 year, and they did quite well. Competition was a little tough. City Coach managed to operate in 75% of the city, 75 to 80% of the city. And when they realized they were having such a tough time competing with Safe Bus Company, they wanted Safe Bus to sell out to them, but that did not happen. And by 1965, the competing bus systems, Twin City Coach Lines and Safe Bus, were more or less at odds with each other. And when Safe Bus refused to sell out, Twin City went down after a 10-month strike of their operators. They wanted better pay, they wanted better vehicles, and Twin City wasn't willing to invest much more money into an operation that they felt wasn't working anyway. So by 1968, Safe Bus Company was responsible for providing transportation for all of the residents in the city of Winston-Salem. To say it was tough, yes, it was, because some of the practices that Safe Bus had put into place, for instance, selling all of their old vehicles to Cuba. That's one of the things that they did in order to, reap some of the funds back that they had put into buses. And, they were kept very well because of the mechanics that they had in place made parts for the buses. So if there was a problem and a mechanic could make a part for it, they were all the better for it. But when Safe Bus took over the city's transportation needs, rather than a 20% area of the city, they started to lose money by providing transportation for the entire city. And some of the old attitudes about segregation made it difficult for them to be profitable. They lost 40% of the riders who once used the other bus system. The integration of schools in Winston-Salem and Forsyth County also caused problems. So those little yellow buses that were out traveling all over the city and county created a loss for them because Safe Bus once was transporting students to and from school every day. So prior to integration, Safe Bus transported them, but when those buses came out, their revenue did suffer for it. I think we normally say segregation was the reason Safe Bus started, but integration ended it. The Winston-Salem Transit Authority was created through the authorization of legislation passed by the North Carolina General Assembly in 1968. And the Winston-Salem Transit Authority was in place because once Safe Bus started taking over transportation for the entire city, then the city of Winston-Salem wanted like an organization or an authority to oversee the operations. Although Safe Bus did have its own general manager as well as other officers in place to operate the system. But following an expansion of services in 68, it became, just hard for them to make money as a private transportation provider. And more people bought cars during that time. Fewer rode the bus. The city of Winston-Salem purchased the assets of Safe Bus Company in 1971. And then on December 1st, 1972, the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, or at the time, Winston-Salem Mass Transit, became solely responsible for providing transportation for the citizens of Winston-Salem. And the rest is history. So it's a story that a lot of people don't know about, and it saddens me that they don't, because it's a piece of our history here in Winston-Salem. I've had people approach me from New York, particularly Maryland, because some of the family members of the Morgans still live in the Baltimore area. And they come down during Juneteenth and are particularly proud of the accomplishments of their family members, as well they should be. But, there's still some of the family members of Safe Bus who are here in Winston-Salem, and we rely upon them at times to share information with us. For example, the very first female operator, bus driver, Priscilla Stevens, she left Winston-Salem Transit. Well, she left the Safe Bus Company and went to work at the tobacco company as a truck driver. She was the very first female truck driver. And then she went to Greyhound, and from where she retired. And we also had some people who were with the company who joined out of the military, because Safe Bus had a history of hiring veterans. And so some came out of the military into service with Safe Bus Company, stayed with the transit system once they transitioned to the Winston-Salem Transit Authority, and eventually retired from WISTA. So it's the history is so rich that we really are proud of it.
That is definitely something to be proud of. That connection from Safe Bus to today's Winston-Salem Transit Authority. Tina, thank you so much for sharing this information with us. And we hope that our viewers will see how much public transportation and Black history walks hand in hand in serving the community.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kevin.
Now, segregation in this country did not just apply to buses. Trains were notorious for denying equal rights to African Americans. In fact, our depot here in Greensboro was at one time segregated. The beautiful architecture facing Church Street was once the entrance for whites only. This door here served as the colored entrance. Through these doors passed traveling Blacks who encountered separate and unequal accommodations, including one Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown, founder of the Palmer Institute in Sedalia. On one particular day, her train trip from Greensboro to Memphis was anything but ordinary, even in the days of segregation. To share the details is Lacey Wilson, director of the Palmer Memorial Institute. Hello, Lacey. How are you?
Not too bad, Kevin. How about yourself?
I am doing great. Thank you for joining us today. To start off, can you tell our viewers who are not familiar, who exactly is Charlotte Hawkins Brown?
Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown is an educator and advocate. She built the Palmer Memorial Institute, the school that exists today as a state historic site. She built it as a private boarding school and lasted from about 1902 to 1971, teaching and graduating over 2,000 students here as a private boarding school. Students learned about all sorts of things, mechanical techniques, liberal arts, agricultural skills, art, languages, all sorts of things were being taught at this school. She is also an advocate and in a variety of social issues as well, giving speeches across the country about racial equality, criminal justice, suffrage for women, but especially for Black women, and has her hand in a lot of pots.
Tell us a little bit about her background before the Palmer Institute and the other items you mentioned.
So she was born in Henderson, North Carolina, but didn't stay there very long, moved up to what will settle with her family. Her mother and stepfather will settle with her in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So that's where her primary schooling is going to occur. It's where she'll receive her teaching certificate there. And while there, she's going to be inspired to join the American Missionary Association, who was sending teachers down to the South to a variety of Black schools. And that's what's going to inspire her to come down to what was then and is now Sedalia, North Carolina. There was an AMA school here that lasted about a year, and then the AMA closed that school after a year, but the community was so impressed with Charlotte, was so invested in her continuing to teach their children, but also their limited amount of schooling there. If that school goes away, they asked her to stay and continue to teach her students. So she will go on to connect with founders and industrialists in the North, as well as educators here in the South, and will build the Palmer Memorial Institute. That's the school that she founded.
Sounds like she was a very accomplished woman. Tell us about that fateful trip that she took at the Southern Railway Depot from downtown Greensboro to Memphis, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm. This is one of my favorite stories about Charlotte because it connects a lot of the things that she's involved in, especially in her advocacy work. It is about 1920, and she is on her way to an interracial cooperation organization meeting. They're having a meeting in Memphis, and she's heavily involved in these interracial cooperation organizations in terms of these organizations are intended to have Black women and white women sitting together to help solve problems together. And she is on her way there. She takes many trains during her lifetime and with her advocacy. This particular train, she had booked a sleeping car for herself. But this is also the United States during the age of Jim Crow and segregation. So along the way, she is going to be accosted by some white men on the train who want her removed from the sleeping car. They want her sent back to the smoking car, which is where the Black people were segregated to at the time. She's upset. She's embarrassed by this, and she will. But the threat is either she's going to go back with them to the smoking car train, or she's going to be thrown off the train. So she goes, but she makes note. As I said, she's heading to this interracial cooperation meeting. She makes note of the many white women she's passing on the way back to the smoking car train, who she expects to see at this meeting that she's going to be going to and speaking at. It's a very important part of that story, that because the speech that she gives there is that you need to stand up for us when we are in time of crisis as well, not just when we're at these meetings.
So she entered the Southern Railway Depot through the colored entrance, waited in the colored waiting room, boarded the train into a sleeping car that she paid full price for, but was then forced into the smoking car for the remainder of the trip. What was her response to being forced to move?
She's upset. She's embarrassed to be removed. The sleeping car train is a more expensive ticket, and that's where she had planned to be. She's upset and embarrassed to be forced back, but she does see this as an opportunity. And so with her lawyer here in Greensboro, she'll make attempts to sue the Pullman train company for discrimination and the cost of her ticket.
She then decided to take them to court. How did the Pullman company respond?
It's very they did not take us very kindly to this. So knowing history, there's a lot of segregation that goes on in Pullman cars. But this particular instance, she is asking for, we know through her letters with her and her lawyer. Her lawyer has been instructed to ask for $3,000, which is a lot of money at that time. She's asked for $3,000 for discrimination and for the price of the ticket. The Pullman company will counter with, we're not giving more than $500. We're not interested in giving any more than $500. And the lawyer reasonably surmises and tells Charlotte, that Dr. Brown, that doesn't include like his fees as well. But he's suggesting that he's willing to counter offer, but if they go back to 500, it would be worthwhile for her just to take the 500. And he also definitely compares this to fights that Booker T. Washington had, in which he would just take the lower amount that was being offered because it was still a win. We know from Charlotte's response that she says, I don't want you to go back countering with any less than $1,500. She still believes that she should be getting a majority of the amount that she's being asked for. And so that's where we know in terms of our sources where that's ending right now. At that point, she's like, well, I understand that Booker T. Washington was asking for this amount, but he was a man of a different time and we need to stand up for ourselves. I'm paraphrasing, but we also need to keep in mind that this was something that was discriminatory. This was wrong. We should ask for what I deserve in this.
What was the result of her lawsuit?
The final result, we believe that she got her ticket taken care of. We believe that she was not paid for the discrimination, but she will get paid for the price of her ticket. She'll get refunded that, which is still a notable win at that time.
What impact do you feel that Dr. Charlotte Hawkins Brown had on civil rights when it comes to public transportation or society at large?
So specifically in public transportation, there are a lot of discrimination suits that happen regarding public transportation throughout America's long history. This is an example of something that we don't really think of as part of the civil rights movement, but is part of the longer civil rights movement. And this allows us to see how people are able to make changes and still fight against discrimination, even around 1920, 1921. That's notable. This is not the first time that she sues, and it will not be the last, but it's the one that's most notable because of the story that she tells at the conference with the Interracial Cooperation Organization and from the letters where we can see direct numbers of what she's asking for. In terms of her influence on discrimination and civil rights long-term, not just with transportation, there's a lot to be said. She opened a very prosperous, very well-beloved private boarding school for Black students, where a lot of students were able to graduate, to get skills, and they all attribute their successes back to this school and the influence of her creating this school and being able to have it. When we look at her work involving suffrage, we can see her advocating for Black women to get the right to vote at the time that white women are starting to get the right to vote, which is an important voice in that story. She speaks on so many issues during her lifetime and involving education, criminal justice. It really, you can see the many kinds of, when you look at the kinds of speeches that she's giving and the kinds of things she's involved in, you can really see the long history of a lot of these issues. And you can see how people can begin to make strides even today because there's a long history behind it. So I would say that involving her lawsuit specifically with the Pullman, you can see that she's able to start to make changes and start to fight back against discrimination as early as 1920, 1921 in that particular example with transportation. And when we look at her long legacy of her lifetime advocating for students, both as students and beyond as people, we can see the many different threads of advocacy that exist throughout her life that connect to so many today.
Lacey, we thank you for joining us today, for sharing this information on Dr. Hawkins Brown. And we encourage the viewers to visit the memorial institute if they get an opportunity. Can you tell us where it's located?
Absolutely. We are at 6136 Burlington Road. If you drive along there, we're a large site, but if you go to the visitor center, that's the best way to come and meet us there. We do tours on all the days that we're open. That is Tuesday through Saturday, and those tours were at 10, 1, and 3. We are currently doing outdoor tours, but we're hopeful that we'll go back to doing indoor canary tours as well. Our website has a lot more information, as well as our Facebook page. So if you look at the Charlotte Hawkins Brown Museum, you'll find us from there. But our website also has a lot of digital resources. So for those who are unable to come right out, you can see a tour of Canary Cottage on our website. You can see a campus tour on our website as well. And we did put up a digital exhibit from a UNCG student very recently about the Paul Memorial Building, which was the big classroom building that the school had.
And of course, COVID prevention guidelines will be followed for live visits.
Absolutely. Please bring a mask and be maxed up on the site. We definitely encourage, especially depending on the nice weather, it'd be great to come down and take a nice socially distant walk throughout the former campus.
So we have discussed just 3 moments where Black history and public transportation meet. There are plenty more to be discovered online or by visiting museums and historic sites. Take the time to learn this important history. I'm Kevin Elwood, and remember, Black history is American history. Take care and stay safe.